The crystal beings of Ethros Prime sang their death songs as explosions shook the ground above their underground cities. Elder crystal singer Zahn pressed his translucent hands against the communication array, feeling the vibrations of terror from his people through the living stone walls. The Korthak Empire had come to their peaceful world 3 months ago, and nothing would ever be the same. "Send the message again," Zahn told his aide, watching as another blast made dust fall from the ceiling. "Someone in the galaxy must hear us." The message went out across space, carried by quantum waves that would take months to reach distant worlds. "We are dying. Our children cry in crystal caves while monsters tear apart our world. Please, someone help us." Far away on a military station orbiting Earth's moon, Captain Jake Morrison read the transmission for the 3rd time. The coffee in his metal cup had gone cold while he studied the star charts showing the Andromeda spiral. The message had taken 8 months to reach human space, which meant the situation was probably much worse now. "What do you think, Lyra?" Morrison asked the woman sitting across from him in the briefing room. Ambassador Lyra Voss looked up from her tablet. She had spent years learning about alien cultures, but the Zilani were new to human contact. They sound desperate. "These crystal beings have never fought a war before. They make art and music, not weapons." Morrison stood up and walked to the large window showing Earth below. Blue oceans and white clouds looked peaceful from here, but he knew better. Earth was a death world where everything fought to survive. Humans had spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other and everything else that threatened them. "The Korthak Empire," Morrison said, reading from his screen. "Bug-like aliens who attack peaceful worlds. They take slaves and resources, then move on to the next target." Commander Lisa Parker entered the briefing room carrying a stack of files. Her uniform was crisp and her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun. "High Command wants to know if we're interested in helping these crystal people." Morrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Interested? Lisa, these bug aliens are attacking innocent people. Of course we're interested." Dr. Alex Turner, the team's alien expert, pulled up images on the main screen. The Zilani looked like walking crystals that reflected light in beautiful patterns. They were tall and thin, with gentle faces that seemed incapable of violence. The Korthak looked like giant insects with sharp claws and too many teeth. "The Zilani have no military," Turner explained. "They've never needed one. Their world is perfect for their kind of life. Warm, safe, with crystal formations that they use for homes and communication." "And the Korthak?" Morrison asked. "Pure predators. They come from a world where only the strongest survive. They see peaceful species as easy prey." Lyra leaned forward in her chair. "The Zilani are asking for help, but they probably expect diplomats. Maybe peacekeepers who will negotiate with the Korthak." Morrison walked back to the table and put his hands on the metal surface. "Negotiate? These bug aliens are killing innocent people. There's nothing to negotiate, sir," Lisa said carefully. "The Zilani might not understand what kind of help we provide." Morrison looked at his team. Lyra with her diplomatic training, Lisa with her military experience, Turner with his knowledge of alien cultures. All of them good people who wanted to help. All of them human. "Let me make this clear," Morrison said. "When someone calls for help because monsters are attacking their children, we don't send negotiators. We send soldiers." 2 days later, the human fleet assembled in space above Earth. 3 massive dreadnoughts led the formation, each one over a kilometer long and armed with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. 12 destroyers flanked them, fast and deadly ships designed for hunting down enemies. Support vessels carried supplies, medical equipment, and extra troops. Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Vengeance. The name fit his mood perfectly. Through the bridge windows, he could see Earth growing smaller as they moved toward the jump point. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," announced Lieutenant Ben Carter from the communications station. "Dr. Turner," Morrison said, "send a message to the Zilani. Tell them help is coming." Turner typed quickly on his console. "What should I say about what kind of help?" Morrison thought for a moment. The Zilani were expecting peaceful aliens who would try to solve their problem with words and agreements. Instead, they were getting humans who solve problems with overwhelming force. "Tell them we received their call for aid. Tell them we're bringing everything we need to solve their problem permanently." The message was sent, racing across space toward Ethros Prime. On the bridge, the crew prepared for the jump to hyperspace. Morrison knew that once they arrived, everything would change. The galaxy had many peaceful species who tried to solve conflicts with patience and wisdom. Humans were not one of those species. "Sir?" Lisa asked. "What if the Zilani don't want the kind of help we're bringing?" Morrison watched the stars stretch into lines as the ship entered hyperspace. Then they should have been more specific in their message. Back on Ethros Prime, Elder Zahn received the human response and felt hope for the first time in months. The translation was strange, talking about permanent solutions and everything needed, but it clearly said help was coming. Zahn shared the news with his people through the crystal network that connected their underground cities. For the first time since the Korthak arrived, the Zilani sang songs of hope instead of fear. Above-ground Korthak warriors continued their destruction, unaware that something new was coming to their war. Something that had learned to fight on a world where peace was earned through strength, and mercy was a luxury only the strong could afford. The human fleet moved through hyperspace toward a meeting that would change the galaxy forever. In the depths of space, predators and prey were about to learn what happened when someone called Earth for help. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ethros system, like a storm arriving in paradise. Warning lights flashed on every bridge as sensors detected the massive ships materializing from nothing. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance watching the tactical display show their arrival. "All ships combat formation," Morrison ordered. "Shields up, weapons ready." This was standard procedure for entering unknown space, but the humans didn't know they were being watched. On a small moon near the system's edge, Korthak scouts recorded everything through high-powered telescopes. The insect-like aliens clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. "Look at these mammals," hissed Scout Leader Kickstar into his communicator. "They arrive like they own the system. War Chieftain Vextar will want to see this." Meanwhile, Elder Crystal Singer Zahn felt the harmonic vibrations through the crystal network as his people detected the human arrival. The Zilani had built beautiful ships from living crystal that sang as they moved through space. 3 of these vessels now approached the human fleet, their surfaces reflecting starlight and patterns of welcome. On the bridge of the UES Vengeance, Lieutenant Ben Carter monitored the communications array. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the approaching vessels. It's musical." Ambassador Lyra Voss hurried to the communication station. She had studied many alien languages, but this was different. The Zilani spoke through harmonic frequencies that created complex melodies. Her translation computer worked frantically to convert the songs into words. "They're greeting us," Lyra said, frowning at her screen. "But it's very formal. Something about honored singers from distant stars and harmony of peaceful meeting." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the small crystal ships. They were beautiful, but had no weapons that human sensors could detect. "Tell them we're here to help with their Korthak problem." The translation took several minutes as the computer converted human words into Zilani song speech. When the reply came back, Lyra's face went pale. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. They're asking about our diplomatic ceremonies and want to know when we'll be ready for the ritual of peaceful greeting." Commander Lisa Parker stepped forward, her military training making her uncomfortable with the delay. "Captain, we should establish secure communications and get a tactical briefing. Every minute we waste gives the Korthak more time to prepare." The crystal ships moved closer, and the human fleet automatically adjusted formation to keep the visitors in a safe zone. This simple military maneuver caused panic among the Zilani, who had never seen ships move in such coordinated patterns. Elder Zahn himself was aboard the lead crystal ship, along with his top advisors. They had expected to meet peaceful diplomats or maybe scientific observers. Instead, they found themselves looking at massive warships that moved like predators. "Great Singer," whispered one of Zahn's aides. "Their ships are designed for battle. Each one carries enough weapons to destroy our entire fleet." Zahn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. "Perhaps they are peacekeepers. Many species need protection to maintain harmony." The first face-to-face meeting took place in the shuttle bay of the UES Vengeance. The Zilani delegation arrived in a small crystal craft that sang softly as it landed. When the airlocks opened, the humans got their first close look at the beings they had come to help. Elder Zahn stood over 2 meters tall, his body made of what looked like living crystal that shifted color as he moved. His face was gentle and wise, with large eyes that held no understanding of violence. Behind him came 3 other Zilani, each one beautiful and fragile-looking. Captain Morrison waited with his senior officers, all of them wearing their military uniforms with visible sidearms. The contrast was immediate and disturbing. The Zilani looked like living art, while the humans looked like professional soldiers. "Welcome to human space," Morrison said, trying to be diplomatic. "I'm Captain Morrison, commander of this battle group." The translation took time, and when Zahn finally understood, his crystalline features showed confusion. "Battle group? We do not understand. We asked for aid, not warriors." Dr. Alex Turner stepped forward, his scanner device humming as it analyzed the Zilani biology. "Fascinating. Your entire cellular structure is silicon-based, with crystalline matrices for data storage. You're not just like crystals, you are crystals." Zahn recoiled slightly from the scanner. "You study us like specimens? Are you scientists?" "Some of us," Morrison said, "but mostly we're military. We received your distress call about the Korthak attacks. We're here to stop them." The translation of "stop them" came out as something like "end their song forever" in Zilani language. Zahn's crystalline body flickered with alarm colors. "End their song? You mean kill them?" Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. This was not going as expected. "Elder Zahn, the Korthak are attacking your people. They're destroying your cities and enslaving your population. What did you think we were going to do?" "Negotiate," Zahn said desperately. "Create harmony between our peoples. Find a peaceful solution where all can sing their own songs." Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. She was a small woman with scars on her hands from years of combat. "Sir, with respect to the elder, you can't negotiate with monsters who attack children." The word monsters translated into Zilani as something like beings without harmony, which was the worst insult in their language. Zahn and his advisors sang a brief song of sorrow. "You come from a death world," Zahn said, the translation computer making his voice sound sad. "We have heard of such places. Worlds where life fights life, where harmony is impossible." "Earth taught us to fight," Morrison admitted, "but we fight to protect people who can't protect themselves." Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks had been monitoring the crystal ship since they arrived. "Captain, their technology is incredible, but it's all based on growth and harmony. They don't have weapons because they never needed to invent them." Morrison looked at the Zilani delegation with new understanding. These people had never known war. They had lived in peace for thousands of years, creating beauty and art on their perfect world. They literally couldn't understand the concept of defeating an enemy through violence. "Elder Zahn," Morrison said carefully, "the Korthak won't stop attacking you because you ask them nicely. They're predators. The only language they understand is force." Zahn's crystalline body dimmed with sadness. "And you? Your people? You understand this language?" "We're fluent in it," Lisa said grimly. At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Lieutenant Carter's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, to the bridge. Korthak ships have been detected moving toward our position." Morrison looked at the Zilani delegation. "Elder Zahn, you're about to see how humans solve problems. I suggest your ships move to a safe distance." As the humans rushed to battle stations, Zahn and his people stood in the shuttle bay, finally understanding what kind of help they had requested. They had asked for aid from a species that saw violence as a tool, not a tragedy. In the darkness of space, Korthak warships approached, ready to test these strange mammals who dared to enter their hunting ground. Neither side knew they were about to discover what happened when predators met something even more dangerous. War Chieftain Vextar studied the tactical display in his command chamber, his insect-like mandibles clicking with amusement. The mammals had brought impressive ships, but the Korthak Empire had conquered dozens of species with impressive technology. What mattered was not the size of the weapons, but the will to use them properly. "Soft mammals," Vextar hissed to his sub-commanders. "Look how they cluster together like frightened prey animals. They probably think their metal shells will protect them." The Korthak had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. They understood violence in ways that peaceful species could not imagine. They had perfected tactics of terror, overwhelming force, and brutal efficiency that broke the will of their enemies before the real fighting even began. "Send the probe ships," Vextar ordered. "Let us see how these Deathworld creatures react to proper predator behavior." 3 small Korthak vessels broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the human position. These ships were designed to cause fear rather than damage. They would attack suddenly, inflict casualties, then retreat before the enemy could respond effectively. Most species panicked when faced with such tactics. Humans were not most species. On the bridge of the UES Vengeance, Captain Morrison watched the approaching Korthak ships with professional interest. 3 fast attack craft, probably testing our response time and defensive capabilities. Commander Lisa Parker was already coordinating the response. Destroyer Squadron Alpha is moving to intercept. Fighters launching from all carriers. The first engagement lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The Korthak probe ships attacked with their standard pattern: sudden acceleration, rapid weapon fire, then immediate retreat. They expected the humans to respond with clumsy defensive maneuvers and confused communications. Instead, they found themselves facing coordinated fighter squadrons that moved like hunting packs. Human pilots had trained for aerial combat in Earth's atmosphere, where a single mistake meant death. Space combat was easier because there was more room to maneuver. Lieutenant Commander Nick Thompson led the first fighter wing, his voice calm over the communications channel. Tango 1 through 6, spread formation. Let's show these bugs how humans hunt. The Korthak pilots suddenly found themselves surrounded by human fighters that moved in ways no other species had ever demonstrated. Instead of maintaining safe distances and exchanging long-range fire, the humans closed to point-blank range and engaged in what could only be called aerial dogfighting. Impossible, clicked the lead Korthak pilot. They are attacking us directly. This is insane. What the Korthak didn't understand was that humans had spent centuries learning to fight in 3 dimensions. Air combat over Earth had taught them to think vertically, to use gravity and momentum as weapons, to turn defensive positions into attack opportunities. 2 Korthak ships were destroyed in the first minute. The third tried to retreat but found its escape route blocked by human destroyers that had moved into position with timing that seemed almost supernatural. All Korthak vessels destroyed, reported the tactical officer. No human casualties. War Chieftain Vextar stared at his display in disbelief. 3 of his ships destroyed without inflicting any damage on the enemy. This had never happened before. Ever. Analyze their tactics, Vextar ordered his intelligence officer. What weapons did they use? Standard energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, came the report. Nothing unusual about their technology, but their coordination was unprecedented. On the human ships, Colonel Sam Mitchell was preparing his ground forces for the next phase. Mitchell had fought in Earth's last major war and understood something that most alien species did not. Space battles were just the opening act. Real wars were won by soldiers who could take and hold ground. Listen up, people, Mitchell addressed his troops over the ship's intercom. Intelligence reports suggest the Korthak are holding several Zalani cities. Our job is to get those civilians out and eliminate the Korthak presence. Master Gunnery Sergeant Chris Anderson, a veteran of more battles than he cared to remember, checked his equipment one final time. His squad had been together for 5 years, and they moved like a single organism when the shooting started. Sarge, asked one of the younger Marines, what do we know about Korthak ground tactics? Anderson smiled grimly. They like to use fear and intimidation. Probably never fought anyone who shoots back properly. The Korthak Empire's standard ground strategy was simple and effective. Overwhelming numbers, brutal displays of violence, and the systematic terrorization of civilian populations. It worked because most species would surrender rather than watch their non-combatants suffer. Dr. Emma Rhodes, the unit's combat medic, had studied Korthak biology during the trip to Ethros Prime. They're strong and fast, but they have weak points. Their exoskeletons can't handle rapid temperature changes, and their joints are vulnerable to kinetic impact. Technical Sergeant Tony Martinez patted the demolition charges on his belt. Good to know, Doc. How do they handle explosives? Poorly, Rhodes said with a slight smile. Their hearing is much more sensitive than ours. Loud noises disorient them. War Chieftain Vextar decided to test these mammals more seriously. He dispatched a full attack squadron, 20 heavy warships with enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to glass. Surely the mammals would retreat when faced with overwhelming force. The humans did not retreat. All ships battle formation Omega, Captain Morrison ordered. Time to show these predators what real hunters look like. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Korthak attacked with brutal efficiency, using tactics that had conquered a dozen worlds. They concentrated fire on single targets, used overwhelming numbers, and employed psychological warfare techniques that had broken countless enemy formations. The humans responded with tactics that no other species had ever developed. They used their ships like cavalry, charging into close range where their superior training and reflexes gave them advantages. They concentrated their firepower not on individual ships, but on breaking the enemy's formation and command structure. Target their command vessel, Morrison ordered. Break their coordination. Human destroyers dove through the Korthak formation like sharks through a school of fish. They took damage but kept fighting. Their crews trained to function even when their ships were falling apart around them. The Korthak discovered something terrifying. These mammals got more dangerous when they were hurt. A damaged human ship didn't retreat. It fought harder, as if pain somehow made them stronger. War Chieftain Vextar watched his tactical display with growing horror. Half his squadron was gone, and the remainder was scattered and confused. The mammals fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They seemed to actually enjoy the violence. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the mammals are broadcasting a message." "Put it through," Vextar ordered. Captain Morrison's voice filled the Korthak command chamber, the translation making his words clear and cold. "This is Captain Morrison of the human fleet. You have attacked innocent people under our protection. Surrender now or we will hunt down every one of your ships." Vextar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Hunt us? We are the predators here, mammal." Morrison's reply came back immediately. "You were the predators. Now you're the prey." The remaining Korthak ships tried to retreat, but they discovered that the humans had anticipated this. Human vessels had moved to block every escape route, turning the battle space into a trap. By the time the shooting stopped, the Korthak attack squadron had ceased to exist. War Chieftain Vextar found himself alone in space, his flagship crippled and surrounded by human warships. For the first time in his life, the supreme predator of the Korthak Empire understood what it felt like to be prey. Admiral Kate Sullivan arrived with the second human fleet just as War Chieftain Vextar was sending desperate messages back to the Korthak Empire. Her ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, adding another 15 warships to the human force already in the system. "Looks like you started the party without me, Jake," Sullivan said over the communications channel to Captain Morrison. Morrison smiled as he watched the tactical display. Sullivan was the kind of officer who made enemies nervous just by existing. She had earned her reputation fighting pirates in the outer colonies, where mercy was a luxury that got people killed. "We've been getting acquainted with the locals," Morrison replied. "The Korthak don't seem to like our diplomatic style." On the surface of Ethros Prime, Colonel Sam Mitchell was learning just how much the Korthak Empire relied on terror tactics. His Marines had landed near the crystal city of Harmony Falls, where Korthak forces had taken thousands of Zilani prisoners. "This is disgusting," muttered Sergeant Maria Gonzalez as she surveyed the Korthak camp through her scope. The insect-like aliens had built cages from scavenged crystal formations, turning the beautiful Zilani architecture into prisons. Master Gunnery Sergeant Chris Anderson studied the enemy positions with professional interest. They're set up for intimidation, not defense. Probably never expected anyone to actually attack them. The Korthak had positioned their heavy weapons to threaten the prisoners, not to defend against assault. It was a strategy that worked perfectly against civilized species, who valued the lives of innocents above military objectives. Humans had a different perspective on such situations. "Tony," Anderson said to Technical Sergeant Martinez, "how long to neutralize their heavy weapons?" Martinez checked his demolition equipment. "Give me 2 minutes after we start shooting, Sarge. Those gun positions are way too exposed." Dr. Emma Rhodes had been monitoring Korthak communications through her translation equipment. "They're planning to execute prisoners if we attack. Standard terror tactic." Colonel Mitchell listened to the reports with growing anger. On Earth, soldiers who threatened civilians were considered the worst kind of enemy. Such behavior demanded a specific type of response. "Change of plans," Mitchell announced. "We're not doing a careful rescue operation. We're doing a lightning assault. Hit them so fast they don't have time to hurt the Yao." Prisoners, what happened next became known in human military history as the Harmony Falls intervention. It lasted exactly 11 minutes and demonstrated why Earth's soldiers were considered the most dangerous ground fighters in the galaxy. The attack began with orbital bombardment from Admiral Sullivan's ships. Instead of massive explosions that might harm the prisoners, the humans used precision kinetic strikes that destroyed specific Korthak positions with surgical accuracy. That's impossible, hissed the Korthak camp commander. No species has targeting systems that precise. Human soldiers had trained for urban combat in Earth's crowded cities, where a single stray shot could kill innocent people. They had learned to fight with precision that other species considered impossible. The ground assault came next. Human Marines dropped from orbit in individual pods, landing inside the Korthak perimeter before the enemy could react. What the Korthak expected was a careful approach. With negotiations and gradual pressure, what they got was violence so swift and coordinated that their command structure collapsed before they understood what was happening. Lieutenant Commander Nick Thompson led an airstrike with fighters designed for close ground support. His pilots had trained to provide cover for ground troops in situations where friendly and enemy forces were mixed together. Precision strikes only, Thompson ordered his squadron. Our people are down there with the prisoners. The Korthak had never faced enemies who could coordinate air and ground forces so effectively. Their communications networks, designed to intimidate rather than to coordinate defense, failed under the human assault. Dr. Rachel Kim, Admiral Sullivan's specialist in alien psychology, watched the battle from the Fleet Command Center. She had studied Korthak behavior for years and understood their fundamental weakness. They're pack hunters, Kim explained to Sullivan. Once their hierarchy breaks down, they lose all coordination. They don't know how to fight as individuals. This was exactly what the humans were targeting. Instead of trying to defeat the Korthak through attrition, they focused on destroying the command structure that held the enemy together. On the ground, Master Gunnery Sergeant Anderson led his squad through the Korthak positions, like they were conducting a training exercise. His Marines moved with the kind of unit cohesion that took years to develop, each soldier knowing exactly what the others would do in any situation. Prisoners secure, Anderson reported over the communications net. Korthak forces scattered and confused. The Zilani civilians huddled in their crystal cages could hardly believe what they were seeing. The Korthak warriors who had terrorized them for months were running in panic from human soldiers who seemed to appear from nowhere. Elder Crystal Singer Zahn, who had been held prisoner in the central cage, watched through the transparent crystal walls as humans systematically dismantled the Korthak camp. The violence was swift and brutal, but it was also precise and controlled. They fight like they're dancing, Zahn whispered to another prisoner. Every movement has purpose. Technical Sergeant Martinez proved that his 2-minute estimate had been conservative. The Korthak heavy weapons were destroyed in 90 seconds, their crews eliminated before they could threaten the prisoners. But the real shock came when the Korthak tried to retreat. They discovered that the humans had anticipated this and positioned forces to block every escape route. The battle wasn't just a rescue operation. It was a trap. No survivors, Colonel Mitchell ordered grimly. These particular Korthak won't be terrorizing anyone else. War Chieftain Vextar received the reports from the surface with growing disbelief. His ground forces hadn't just been defeated. They had been eliminated. An entire Korthak army had ceased to exist in less than 15 minutes. How many enemy casualties? Vextar demanded. Unknown, his intelligence officer reported. But preliminary scans suggest very few. This was impossible. The Korthak Empire's military doctrine was based on the certainty that no species could match their level of violence. They had conquered peaceful civilizations by being more willing to kill and die than their enemies. The humans had just demonstrated that there were levels of violence the Korthak had never imagined. Admiral Sullivan's fleet began the systematic destruction of Korthak positions throughout the system. Using tactics developed during Earth's asteroid wars, human ships bombarded enemy installations with rocks accelerated to incredible speeds. It's just physics, explained Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks to a fascinated Dr. Turner. Take a big rock, speed it up to a significant fraction of light speed and point it at your target. No shields, no defense systems, just kinetic energy. The Korthak had never encountered enemies who thought of asteroids as ammunition. Their defensive strategies were designed to stop energy weapons and guided missiles, not mountain-sized projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. War Chieftain Vextar sent his final message to the Korthak High Command as human ships closed in on his position. The mammals are not like other species. They do not fight to defend or to conquer. They fight to exterminate. Send everything we have or the Empire falls. But even as he sent the message, Vextar knew it was too late. The humans hadn't come to the Ethros system to fight a war. They had come to solve a problem, and their solution was thorough and permanent. The age of Korthik expansion was ending, stopped by a species that understood something the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes peace could only be protected by those willing to fight without mercy for those who could not fight at all. 3 weeks after the humans arrived at Ethros Prime, the Korthak Empire officially ceased to exist. The last war fleet sent to stop the human mammals had been intercepted at the edge of Korthak space and destroyed so completely that survivors were still being found in escape pods, scattered across 3 star systems. President Michelle Davis stood before the Galactic Council chamber, looking at the assembled representatives of 47 species. Most of them had never seen a human before, and many were clearly nervous about what they had heard. Honored delegates, President Davis began, her voice calm and professional. We are here to address concerns about Earth's recent military intervention in the Ethros system. High Counselor Orthmex, a tall insectoid being from a species that had never known war, spoke for the Council. President Davis, your species has violated numerous galactic conventions regarding the conduct of interstellar conflict. The complete destruction of the Korthak Empire goes far beyond any reasonable definition of defensive action. Davis looked around the chamber at faces that showed confusion, fear, and in some cases barely concealed relief. She understood their perspective. Most galactic species had evolved on worlds where cooperation was more valuable than competition, where problems were solved through patience and compromise. High Counselor, Davis replied, perhaps we have different definitions of reasonable. When someone attacks children, humans consider total elimination of the threat to be the minimum acceptable response. Ambassador Lyra Voss, who had remained with the Zilani to help coordinate reconstruction efforts, transmitted her report to the Council in real time. The crystal beings were still struggling to understand what had happened to their world. The humans are different, Elder Crystal Singer Zahn explained to the Council through the translation array. They rebuild our cities while their soldiers patrol our skies. They heal our wounded while their ships hunt down the last Korthak raiders. We do not understand how beings capable of such violence can also show such kindness, Dr. Alex. Turner had spent the last 3 weeks studying Zilani culture and was beginning to understand the fundamental difference between human and galactic thinking. The Zilani see violence and compassion as opposites, he explained to Captain Morrison. They can't comprehend that we use violence to protect compassion. Morrison was standing in the rebuilt Crystal Garden where Korthak forces had once held prisoners. Human engineers had worked alongside Zilani artisans to repair the damage, creating something that was both functional and beautiful. Maybe that's why they needed us, Morrison said, watching human children play with young Zilani in the crystal formations. Some of the human families had stayed to help with reconstruction, and their children adapted to the alien environment with typical human flexibility. Back in the council chamber, President Davis was facing increasingly hostile questions about human military doctrine. Your forces showed no restraint, accused Delegate Morthak from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. The Korthak were defeated after the first engagement. Everything that followed was unnecessary slaughter. Davis felt the familiar flash of anger that came when peaceful beings criticized those who protected them. Delegate Morthak, how many worlds did the Korthak Empire conquer? How many species did they enslave? How many children died while the galaxy tried to find a diplomatic solution? The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the numbers, but no one wanted to speak them aloud. 14 worlds, Davis continued. 7 species driven to extinction. Millions of dead civilians. And in all that time, not one galactic intervention. Not one rescue mission. Not one species willing to fight back. High Counselor Orthmex made a sound that might have been distress. Violence only creates more violence. If we had been patient, perhaps a peaceful solution could have been found. Peaceful for whom? Davis asked. For the species that were already dead? For the children being sold in Korthak slave markets? Colonel Sam Mitchell was coordinating the final cleanup operations on Ethros Prime when he received a priority message from Earth. Other species were requesting human military assistance. Worlds that had lived in fear of aggressive neighbors were suddenly asking Earth for protection. Looks like word is getting out, Mitchell told Master Gunnery Sergeant Anderson as they reviewed the requests. 3 different species want us to deal with their local predators. Anderson smiled grimly. About time someone started standing up to the bullies. Dr. Emma Rhodes had established a medical clinic in the main Zilani city, treating both human and alien patients. She had learned that Zilani biology responded well to human medical techniques, despite the obvious differences in their crystal-based physiology. "It's interesting," Rhodes told Dr. Turner. "The Zilani heal through harmonic resonance, but they recover faster when they feel safe. The presence of human guards actually accelerates their recovery." This was something the Galactic Council was struggling to understand. How could a species known for violence also be effective healers and protectors? The dichotomy challenged everything they thought they knew about the relationship between aggression and civilization. President Davis addressed this confusion directly. "Honored delegates, you seem to think that violence and compassion cannot coexist. Earth history has taught us differently. The capacity for violence, properly controlled and directed, is what allows compassion to flourish." "But the cost," protested Delegate Quintar from the academic worlds. "The trauma of such actions surely damages your people psychologically." Technical Sergeant Tony Martinez was teaching Zilani engineers how to build defensive installations when he heard this broadcast. He laughed and shook his head. "Lady, you want to know about trauma? Try watching innocent people get slaughtered while you do nothing about it." The truth was that human soldiers slept better, knowing they had stopped monsters from hurting innocent people. The Zilani cities were full of children singing again, because the predators were gone forever. That was worth any psychological cost, Admiral. Kate Sullivan was establishing permanent human bases throughout the Ethros system when she received new orders from Earth. 3 more crisis zones required immediate attention. Species that had never asked for help were suddenly sending desperate messages to the human military. "We're going to need more ships," Sullivan told her staff. "And more Marines. Looks like the galaxy has a lot of problems that need solving." The final council session ended with a formal censure of human military actions and a strong recommendation for more restrained future interventions. President Davis accepted the censure politely and ignored the recommendations completely. As she prepared to leave the council chamber, Davis was approached by a small group of delegates from species that had remained quiet during the debates. "President Davis," said Ambassador Velthar from the Outer Rim colonies, "our worlds have problems that diplomatic solutions cannot address. Perhaps we could discuss mutual defense agreements?" Davis smiled. This was what she had been waiting for. "Ambassador, Earth is always willing to help species that want to protect their children from monsters." 6 months later, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of a new ship, the UES Retribution, as his fleet prepared to answer another call for aid. This time it was the gentlefolk of Meridian 7 who were being terrorized by raiders from the savage clans. "Same drill, people," Morrison announced to his crew. "Someone called for help because bad people are hurting innocent people. We're going to go solve that problem permanently." Lieutenant Ben Carter, now promoted to commander, managed communications for the expanded human fleet. "Sir, we're receiving the same message from the gentlefolk that we got from the Zilani. They're asking for diplomatic intervention." Morrison looked out at the stars ahead, where another species was learning the hard way that some problems couldn't be solved with patience and hope. "Send the standard reply, Commander. Tell them help is coming, and we're bringing everything we need to solve their problem permanently." The galaxy was learning that peace was not the absence of violence. Peace was what happened when those capable of violence chose to protect those who were not. And Earth's children had learned that lesson well on a world where only the strong could afford to be gentle. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the hard truth that the galaxy was finally beginning to understand. Sometimes the only way to stop monsters was to send bigger monsters with better reasons.